Welcome to the Fire Hazard Severity Zone Rollout for the local responsibility areas within California. The Office of the State Fire Marshal is thrilled to have you here.
If you have specific questions, please visit the Contact CAL FIRE page within the Fire Hazard Severity Zone Hub. Use our interactive map to find your local CAL FIRE representative. Once you have identified your representative, you can schedule an appointment using our online calendar.
Today, we are here to introduce the history and background of fire hazard severity zones, the science behind the maps, and the local requirements.
Fire hazard severity zones are not new in the state of California. Historically, as a state, we've learned from past wildfires to improve regulation. The Panorama Fire in 1980 marked the beginning of these important changes in state responsibility area.
The Panorama Fire began in the San Bernardino Mountains, pushed by Santa Ana winds, ultimately burning 28,800 acres, destroying 325 structures, and resulting in 4 fatalities. In response to this fire, Public Resource Code 4201 mandated CAL FIRE to develop fire hazard severity zones in state responsibility area.
11 years after the Panorama Fire, the Tunnel Fire, famously known as the Oakland Hills Fire, devastated a community that was not previously identified as a hazard zone because it was in local responsibility area.
At the time, it was the deadliest and most destructive wildfire on record, burning 1,520 acres, destroying 2,900 structures, and resulting in 25 fatalities. This catastrophic event prompted legislators to adopt Assembly Bill 337, also known as the Bates Bill.
This legislation mandated the Director of CAL FIRE to assess fire hazard severity zones within the local responsibility area and propose recommendations to identify very high fire hazard severity zones to the local agencies. Subsequently, Government Code Section 51179 obligates the local authority to take mitigating actions.
Government Code outlines our responsibility as a state agency. Who? The State Fire Marshal is tasked with identifying fire hazard severity zones statewide.
What? This involves categorizing areas in the state as moderate, high, or very high fire hazard severity zone.
Why? The hazard mapping process will incorporate new science, local climate data, and improved fire assessment modeling in determining hazard ratings. The aim is to mitigate wildfire damage by considering factors such as fuel loading, slope, fire weather, and wind. We will now watch a short video on the science and methods behind the maps.
Hello, I'm Jamie. I'm a member of the CAL FIRE modeling team that developed the Fire Hazard Severity Zone map for California. Fire hazard severity zone maps are built to describe relative wildland and urban interface fire hazard potential over the long term for all areas of the state. The zones reflect areas that have similar burn probabilities and fire behavior characteristics and are split into 3 classes: moderate, high, and very high. To explain the methods used in building fire hazard severity zones, we will show the sequence of steps and some key data inputs, zooming in on the north-central part of Butte County near the cities of Chico and Paradise as an example. The same steps were used statewide. Different steps were taken for modeling fire hazard severity zones in wildland areas and non-wildland areas. Wildland areas include places such as forests, grasslands, and shrublands where the land cover is dominated by vegetation. In these areas, we can apply well-established scientific methods to model fire behavior such as spread and intensity. The potential fire behavior is combined with the likelihood of fire to get an estimate of the hazard. Non-wildland areas include urban, agricultural, and barren lands, and water or wetlands. In these areas, hazard arises due to embers coming in from adjacent wildlands and associated fire spread through urban vegetation and structures. We estimate hazard in non-wildland based on the number of embers, where those embers are likely to land based on local wind patterns and the slope and tree cover within the area, which can increase the chance of fire ignition and spread. The first step in building fire hazard severity zone maps is to define the zones. Areas of the map where fire hazard severity zone scores are determined and a classification is calculated. The zones aim to capture patches of similar fire behavior potential or fire environments. Fire hazard severity zone classes are ultimately applied across an entire zone. The data inputs for developing the zone boundaries include slope and vegetation. Areas that have similar slope and flammability are aggregated or grouped into zones. There is no maximum zone size, but there is a minimum size of 200 acres for continuous wildlands and smaller for islands of wildlands surrounded by urban and agricultural lands. The fire hazard severity model for wildland fire has two key elements: probability of an area burning and expected fire behavior under extreme fuel and weather conditions. The probability of an area burning was calculated using fire history for the years 1991 to 2020. Knowing how much area burned within broadly similar areas of vegetation and climate allows us to calculate the annual likelihood of a fire occurring in that area. We then estimate the potential flame length if fire were to occur based on vegetation type, slope, and the local climate. Vegetation type and climate allow us to understand how much fuel may be present and how dry or available to burn it may be. Because fire hazard severity zones are intended to measure the potential hazard across multiple decades, we use a long-term look at fuel development and do not adjust our data inputs to account for recent fires or fuel management activities. We want to know what a fire could be like under the worst fuel conditions that may occur in an area. Similarly, for climate data, we use the worst 5% of fire weather observations that occurred on days when the weather is dry enough to carry fire. This allows us to capture areas that have infrequent but regular occurrences of hot, dry, and windy conditions and include that in our estimate of hazard. We then combine the probability of fire with the potential flame length to get a final score for hazard in wildland areas. All the scores within a zone are averaged to get a final value for that zone, and the zones are summarized into final classes of moderate, high, or very high. The first step in estimating hazard in non-wildlands is to model ember transport out of adjacent wildlands. Remember that non-wildlands include urban, agricultural, and barren lands, and water or wetlands, and that the hazard in these areas comes from adjacent wildland. To model embers falling onto these lands, we must consider how many may be produced and where they are likely to land in the event of a wildfire. The number of embers, also known as firebrands, produced in the wildland is a function of vegetation type, modeled flame length, and burn probability. We model the dispersal of embers into non-wildland areas under the worst local fire weather conditions when fires are more likely to challenge containment efforts. For example, if the worst fire weather at a given location tends to have winds predominantly out of the northeast at 40 miles per hour, modeled firebrands go predominantly to the southwest and go a greater maximum distance than they would at a site with predominantly 20 mile per hour winds. We then add up all the embers coming into the non-wildland to get an estimate of the relative number or brand load landing in a given location. We build fire hazard severity zones in non-wildland areas by generating buffers off any adjacent wildland. The initial zone classification is the same as the adjacent wildland, with buffers of lower fire hazard severity zone classes modeled at further distances from the wildland boundary. In addition to brand load, we include slope and tree cover in generating fire hazard severity zone buffers, as these factors can promote greater fire ignition and spread. The width of the fire hazard severity zone buffer is wider in areas that have higher brand load, steeper slope, and greater tree cover. Let's go through that sequence again, zooming in on a neighborhood at the wildland-urban interface and focusing on how the cost surface is calculated to build the FHSC buffers. The black line in the image represents the boundary between wildland and non-wildland. The non-wildland area, shown in gray, will be zoned by buffer. The three input variables, brand load, slope, and tree cover, are used to calculate a cost surface, which is then used to determine the width of FHSC buffers. The first input is classified brand load, which has values of 0, 1, 2, or 3, reflecting increasing amounts of mottled embers or firebrands impacting an area. As mentioned before, the brand load is a function of vegetation type and burn probability in the adjacent wildland and the wind patterns in the area. More embers landing on a grid cell will result in a lower value in the cost surface and wider buffers of FHSC. The second input is classified slope, which has a value of 1 for areas with slope less than 20% and a value of 2 for areas with slope greater than 20%. Steeper slopes result in a lower value in the cost surface in that area and wider buffers of FHSC. The final input is classified tree cover, which has values of 1, 2, or 3, reflecting increasing tree cover. Greater tree cover results in a lower cost surface value and wider buffers of FHSC. To calculate the cost surface, the class values for brand load, slope, and tree cover are added together for each grid cell. This value ranges from 2 to 9. Higher numbers reflect a greater potential for fire ignition or spread. We then take the inverse of that sum and scale the value so that the cost surface ranges from 10 to 40. Higher cost implies lower potential for fire spread. The cost surface, reflecting each grid cell's value for brand load, slope, and tree cover, is then used to calculate the width of FHSC buffers. Moving along a line from the wildland edge, The values of sequential grid cells are summed together until the total exceeds the specified value shown in the table. The FHSC class of the first buffer adjacent to the wildland is the same as the FHSC class in the adjacent wildland. As cost surface values are added up, the buffer transitions to lower FHSC classes. In non-wildland, areas that are sufficiently far from hazardous wildlands can remain unzoned, in contrast to wildland areas, which always receive a zone designation. This completes the modeling process for fire hazard severity zones across all lands in the state. Once we have a final fire hazard severity zone map for all lands, the final step in map development is to extract state responsibility areas to fulfill the requirements of the regulatory process. If you have further questions on the zoning methods, please visit the Fire Hazard Severity Zone website for more information on the model and the project in general.
Several crucial factors highlight the current update of the map. This includes advancements in scientific factors determining hazard ratings, encompassing new local climate data, and enhanced fire assessment modeling.
The process began with legislation from 2022, specifically Assembly Bill 642 and Senate Bill 63, mandating CAL FIRE to identify and map areas within the local responsibility area as moderate, high, or very high fire hazard severity zones.
These updates encompass improvements in technology, burn probabilities, fire environment, vegetation density, slope, localized fire weather, and new firebrand production and transport modeling using localized wind data.
A common misconception lies in understanding the distinction between hazard and risk as they're related to the map.
Hazard is based on the physical conditions that create the likelihood and expected fire behavior over a 50-year period without considering mitigation measures such as home hardening, recent wildfire, or fuel management efforts. Risk is the potential damage a fire can cause due to the area under existing conditions, accounting for any mitigations such as fuel management, defensible space, and ignition-resistant building construction.
The Fire Hazard Severity Zone map evaluates hazard as opposed to risk. It operates similarly to flood zone maps, characterizing areas based on the probability of a particular area being affected by fire, rather than explicitly outlining the specific impacts.
CAL FIRE's goal is to assist local agencies with enhancing life and property safety. CAL FIRE works closely with the building industry when setting various building codes and defensible space requirements. We collaborate not to impede development, but to ensure that development mitigations align with the hazards inherent to the area.
This diagram displays the requirements based on hazard zone and responsibility area. As you can see, the requirements for SRA for each zone has remained the same. In the LRA, the updates are focused on the high and moderate zones.
The local agency requirements begin with a transmittal from the State Fire Marshal that identifies fire hazard severity zones.
This begins two simultaneous timelines. First, within 30 days of receiving transmittal, local agencies shall make the information available for public review and comment. Second, 120 days after receiving the transmittal, local agencies shall designate by ordinance moderate, high, and very high fire hazard severity zones.
The final requirement is submitting to the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection. Within 30 days of adopting a local ordinance, you must submit a map depicting the adopted fire hazard severity zones within the local agency, the ordinance of map adoption, and any items outlined in regulation through the online form available on the board's website. Once submitted, you will receive confirmation which marks completion of the requirement.
For more information, please review the resources available in the Fire Hazard Severity Zone Hub. Thank you for watching the Fire Hazard Severity Zone Rollout presentation for local responsibility areas within California.